Hello, and welcome to episode 27 of Friends of the Show. I am Stephen W. Skinner, and this is the podcast where I get to know some of the funniest and nicest folks on Twitter. They're the friends of the show. This week's friend is Kevin at Pan Midwest on Twitter. Kevin is definitely one of the nicest people we've had on. Also, very funny. We discuss his luxurious mustache, and Kevin answers some weird and wonderful questions sent in by very cool listeners. Friends of the Show, episode 27, with Kevin at Pan Midwest. Right now.
One doesn't realize in early life that the price of freedom is loneliness. To be happy is to be tied. That's from C.S. Lewis in the Collected Letters of C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis, classic guy for quotes. Thank you, Kevin, and welcome to the show.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me, Stephen.
Awesome. Well, I'm very happy to have you. And for the listeners, Kevin is a very funny and nice Twitter person. I burst onto the scene about a year ago and has been killing it. Just great stuff all the time, very consistently great. He has a regular tweet call, Mustache Mondays. Very strong branding.
Yes. Yeah.
And we'll get into why the mustache is a key part of your brand. And that's it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, so let's talk about Kevin. What are you about? Where are you from?
All right, so I've lived in a lot of different places, so it can kind of be hard to pin me down, but as many could probably guess, the bulk of my life has been spent in the Midwest. I was actually born in New Jersey. I lived there for 4 years. That plays a very insignificant role in my life.
Not too many
but then I moved
Jersey
to Kansas.
memories.
Yeah, exactly. But then from New Jersey, I moved to Kansas, and that was ages like 4 to 8. So those were kind of the formative childhood years. Like all my favorite sports teams are Kansas City teams because I was in Kansas at that time. And then at age 8, I moved to Indiana, and that's where I did like 3rd grade through my senior year of high school. So that's probably the best place to say I'm from is Indiana. But then I moved to Ohio for college. I worked in Ohio for 1 year. After college, I lived overseas for 1 year after that, and then I've moved to St. Louis, where I've lived for just more than 3 years now in Missouri. And
wow, that is a lot of spots. Where did you live overseas?
I was in Podgorica, Montenegro.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure.
Eastern European, Balkan area, yeah.
Right. Very cool.
It's a young country. Like, I think 2006, it became a country separate from Serbia. So
right, yeah, it used to be Serbia, Montenegro.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. So you would identify with Indiana, he said?
I guess. Usually when people ask me where I'm from, I feel a little bit of conflict about what to say because, like, the place I've lived most recently, the place I currently live, the place I lived the longest, are all different answers. And so, tricky. I don't know. But and my parents don't live in Indiana anymore. So when I go, like, home for, like, Christmas or Thanksgiving, I don't even go there. So it's complicated.
So Kansas.
Sure.
Stick with Kansas. Go Chiefs?
Chiefs,
Royals?
I'm actually wearing a Kansas City Royals hat right now.
Oh, those dastardly Royals. They got our number, our Toronto Blue Jays in the playoffs.
Yes. I remember that.
Quite the series. The fan interference call.
No comment. I don't know.
Exactly. Exactly, Kevin. Well, I'll just leave it at that. We won't get into it. All right, so that's great. And now you're in St. Louis, but you're moving again?
Yes, I will be moving to Seattle in January. So that'll mix things up a lot. I won't be in the Midwest.
Yeah. Go Seahawks then. Have to be a Seahawks fan. So that's where you're planning on settling down for a bit?
At least for a few years, yeah.
Nice.
Kind of open-handed to how long, and I mean, if I moved out there for, the rest of my life, I would be happy with that, but also not saying that's for sure what's going to happen either. So
it doesn't sound like you ever get tied down to one place too long, so maybe that's just sort of your MO. You can never fully settle down. You're like the littlest hobo, but of America.
Maybe. At least in the past, though, it was my parents' decision-making, so only now am I starting to kind of be, like, actually in control of where I live, so.
But it's a very exciting power to have to choose where you want to go.
Yeah, I guess so.
Let's get into the story time. So you have, again, given a few options of stories, and they all sound so good, I don't know which one to pick. So the first one that you have mentioned is called Hitchhiking in Zambia at Midnight, which sounds pretty cool. So maybe tell us about that one.
Sure, yeah. After my sophomore year in college, I spent 6 weeks in Zambia during the summer. In a little, it was actually in the capital city, Lusaka, and I was with a group of people who are all part of the same campus ministry that I was involved in college. And so, yeah, we were there for 6 weeks, but, despite, taking our medicine and getting like shots ahead of time, one of the members of our team still got malaria while we were there. And so he was sick for several days. And, each day we were like, you should probably go to the hospital. Like you're not getting any better. And he put it off like a week, but then finally he went because he felt so bad. So he went to the hospital. Which is probably really scary. Like he's another college student, about my age. I was 20 at the time, and he was probably near the same age. And it's scary to be taken to the hospital in a foreign country. I mean, just because you don't know how the systems work and whatnot, and
probably some language issues, and definitely you're not
potentially
feeling good.
Medicine.
Yeah, communication. You're like trying to tell them your symptoms. I'm pretty sure they know what malaria looks like, though. Right.
So he went there, and we, our group of people that were all of Americans that were all there, we didn't want him to ever have to be at the hospital alone. He was going to have to stay for a little while, and so we would take shifts, spending I think usually 3 hours at a time with him, and then somebody would go at midnight and stay for 6 hours, just spend the whole night at the hospital with him until 6 a.m. And then another team of people would, a couple people would show up to swap out, and so me and another friend on the trip decided that we would volunteer to take the midnight shift. And so, midnight came around, and we didn't have any transportation, so we just relied completely on public transportation and walking. But at midnight, public transportation isn't really going anymore, at least where we were. And already in Zambia, in Lusaka, the line between, hailing down a taxi and hitchhiking is extremely blurry. So I think that's why we felt like we kind of knew we were definitely hitchhiking if it was midnight, but the process was very similar to getting a taxi during the day. You just kind of walk out to the street, and when you think a car is a taxi, you just wave at them and see if they'll stop for you. And, during the day, it's like, who knows whether this is actually somebody who runs a taxi car or just some civilian in their personal car who's giving you a ride for money.
That is the original Uber.
Yeah, exactly. And so, that's why we probably weren't too worried about it. But it was, I think suddenly in the middle of the night, once we're in the car and driving around, we started to realize this was I should not tell my mom that at midnight I went out and got in a random stranger's car in Zambia to get a ride somewhere. But we did. So we got in the car, and it was actually, I think, this guy had a really nice car. I think it was a Mercedes, and he seemed to be a pretty well-off Zambian, and he was very kind and willing to take us. And he's like, I'm not going to charge you money to take you to a hospital, so your friend, that would be really rude. So he's driving us, and we tell him the name of the hospital, and I think he calls his friend to find out where that hospital is because he doesn't know off the top of his head. And so he's talking on the phone, and then he hangs up. He's like, okay, I know where it is. So he drives us, and we get there, and there's a security guard at the hospital, and they won't let his car in because they're closed for visitors. But we had been told that we have permission to show up late, that somebody should be expecting us. And so we talked to the security guard, and she says, to my friend who's with me, you can go in and talk to the front desk, and if they tell me it's okay, I'll let you in, but your friend needs to stay here with the car, and I'm not letting you in until I get verification. So he runs up in and is gone for a little bit. So it's just me and the security guard and the driver of the car waiting for me to let him know if it's okay to leave. Or actually, he was waiting because whoever was currently at the hospital was going to get a ride back with him.
Oh, boom.
Where we were staying.
That's good.
Yeah. So we're sitting there, it's just kind of awkward and silent, and I'm just standing there, and the security guard, after a couple minutes, just looks at me, and she's like, "Give me a biscuit." And I'm like, "What?" In my head, I didn't say it out loud. I just paused, and I was like, excuse me, pardon? She's like, give me a biscuit. And I suddenly remembered that cookies are referred to as biscuits, and like in England, and I guess the same thing in Zambia, and I didn't really realize that. And I, in like the water bottle holder in my backpack, had a sleeve of biscuits, cookies, and so I'm like, oh, these, okay, yeah. So I like open them up, and I'm like, might as well. I think we have the right to be here and let in, but it certainly can't hurt to give some biscuits to the security guard.
Grease a little wheel a little bit with some biscuits.
Exactly. So I give her some, and she eats them, and we're sitting there waiting. And then my friend comes back out, and he's like, yeah, we're at the wrong hospital. And so we're like, oh, okay. So we get back in the car, and we tell the guy, this is not the hospital. Can you call that friend again or call another friend? And we repeat the name of the hospital, and he does. And then he eventually gets the right hospital, takes us there, drops us off. And me and my friend get in there, and our friends leave to go back to the house. And me and my friend have to spend the night in the only other bed. So it's like a hospital bed, and the two of us shared like a twin bed, but honestly probably skinnier than a twin bed. We slept head to toe for the whole night, woke up in a lot of pain the next morning, but we made it. We supported our friend, and he didn't have to spend the night alone in a hospital, even after a couple obstacles along the way. Yeah, it's one of those stories it's ridiculous to kind of think about doing. There's not really like a great like climax or big ending, but it's just kind of like, I should not tell my mom that I hitchhiked at midnight in Zambia.
I hope she's not listening. Well, I think that's very lovely that you went and supported your friend. Everyone came together. Shout out to that driver for sticking with it. He didn't just desert anyone. He made it to the destination eventually. So,
yes.
That's very nice. And he didn't charge anybody?
Nope. He did it all for free. So,
well, that's just
very generous.
That warms your heart hearing those great humanitarian tales such as that.
Absolutely.
All right. And I think we have time for some more stories. So what about
Sure, yeah.
I never expected to be tear gassed.
Yeah.
That sounds like it might be have some more action and adventure in it.
A little bit. So as I mentioned earlier, I lived for 1 year in Podgorica, Montenegro, and they're a young country. They're kind of getting their, act together as a country, as a government. And, during the year that we were living there, and this might still be the case, actually, they were kind of candidating to join the EU. And, they have to meet certain requirements and, kind of prove themselves. And one of the things that they have to prove as a country is that they have the ability and desire to protect human rights. So one of the unfortunate things about Montenegro is that the gay community is very badly mistreated. And yeah, it's really sad. I won't go into all the details, and I think things are changing, but at least there's the general consensus among the culture was very negative towards the gay community. And so there was a gay pride parade while we were there, and this is going to be one of those kind of moments where, the parade certainly unprotected would just be, destroyed by everyday civilians throwing rocks or bullying the people and whatnot. But since they had every right to march and, declare their message, or as any group should, the government had to prove that they could protect them while they did that. And so, they sent out a bunch of riot police and whatnot to protect the way that the parade was going from a lot of people throwing rocks and whatever else at them. But eventually, the protest of the parade got so out of hand that they started having to use tear gas to manage the crowds. And I that day I was just at a cafe, at a different kind of part of the city. It probably would have taken me about 20 minutes to walk to where the parade was supposed to be happening. So I'm not ridiculously far away, but I was not near where the parade route was going.
Right.
But the tear gas had moved the crowd so far away and whatnot that eventually, I'm sitting in this city block with cafes lining, the whole block. And, I can kind of tell that police and whatnot have moved into this portion of the city, but it's still I feel comfortable sitting outside this cafe.
But the vibe is changing.
Right. But then all of a sudden, I see down the block, one by one, each cafe between me and the corner, people are getting up and sprinting towards me. And I'm like, what is going on? And all of a sudden, I could kind of tell that there was cloudiness or gassiness in the air or something. I don't know. But it suddenly was the wind was blowing it right along our block. And everybody at all the cafes outside was getting a big face full of tear gas, having not been involved at all in the parade or the protests. But it's just sweeping down the block, and everybody who was outside with me was getting a big whiff of it and running away teary-eyed and red-faced. And I thankfully was enough of a distance away from the corner that I could like get a heads up and kind of see that something was going to happen. I still did get like inhaled some, but it wasn't too bad. It didn't like incapacitate me or anything. I just, went around the corner, and then I eventually was able to walk back to my apartment with the couple of friends who were with me, and just go to the bathroom, kind of splash water in our face, wash it off, and we were totally fine. We didn't really get affected too much, but it was just a very unexpected Saturday afternoon in Podgorica, Montenegro.
Wow. So just cleared your sinuses, didn't really do too much.
Right.
Just like a spicy meal in your eyes.
Exactly.
All right. Well, that sounds pretty exciting and interesting. You never know what's going to happen when you're living abroad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty good. I hope that they get their act together sooner rather than later over there, You know what I'm saying?
Right. I mean, I guess they were able to protect the parade. It's just, they kind of wreaked havoc on the protesters. So I think that proves it, though, that they're able to protect a parade. But, obviously the consensus of the country at the moment, or at least a few years ago, is not in the best place. So,
right.
Yeah, we'll see how it looks going forward.
Yeah, well, a lot of places are sort of coming around slowly to that idea. We're moving out of the olden days into the new, and we hope that they join us here in the 21st century soon.
Yep.
You too, States, for some stuff. And that's not the last story. We do have a third. Looking forward to it. It is Theresa.
Theresa. Yes. The past 2 years, I've lived in an apartment building in St. Louis with I had one roommate there. And we had a neighbor. Her name was Theresa. She was in her, I think, mid to late 50s, and she lived alone in this apartment in our building. And, we met her on our first day living there, and, we just see her around all the time. But at some point, in our time living there, like we were, friendly. We would say hi when we walked in, but we weren't really friends with her or anything. But at some point, she started kind of interacting with us more frequently, even coming up to our floor and knocking on our door to ask us questions or ask for help with things and whatnot. And that was, it was all fine.
Just neighborly stuff, right? Just
right, yeah. We were happy to be a good neighbor to her. But then eventually, she caught me one day when I was walking out of the building and kind of pulled me aside. And I think maybe invited me into her apartment and told me that her and her boyfriend had broken up, but that he still had a key to her apartment, and so he had been coming over uninvited. And that she was, really scared and nervous and really wanted to cut all ties with him. But obviously, because he still had a key and wasn't willing to give it up, she was kind of powerless to guarantee that he stayed out of her apartment. And so she was going to change the locks in her apartment, but was kind of struggling to know how to do it. So she asked me if I would help her. And so I did. So she had already purchased a new, doorknob apparatus with a lock and whatnot. And so I installed that into her door for her and thought, okay, good, great, happy to help, problem solved. That was really practical. And, this woman living alone won't be bullied by her ex-boyfriend anymore.
That's really good. And, you're pretty handy then, Kevin? Handy with a tool? You got the screwdriver out? You were drilling it in? That thing's not always easy. You have to line it up properly and everything, right?
Right, yeah. It wasn't too complicated. I did have to get just a screwdriver was really all it took, probably. Maybe one other thing, I can't remember. It wasn't too complicated. I didn't have to drill any new holes.
10 minutes in and out, boom.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're being a good number. Yeah.
So that's taken care of, I think, until sometime later she stops me again, and she's like, "Kevin, he's still getting into my apartment somehow. I think he knows how to pick a lock, and so I think when I'm gone, he comes in and he picks my lock and gets in." So that kind of put me in a weird situation because I was a little bit skeptical that was happening. Mainly, my main reasoning is that her apartment is the first apartment when you walk into the building, and so anybody coming or going walks by there, so it's a really hard place to do something you shouldn't be doing, picking a lock. Not to mention the walls are paper thin. You can hear everything happening in the vicinity, and so somebody sitting there trying to jimmy a lock open you're going to hear it, I think. But
so a bit of a red flag immediately.
Bit of a red flag, but on the off chance that she's right, I obviously I didn't want to have my immediate reaction be to disbelieve her or invalidate her fear and what she's telling me. So I was like, okay, like, so when I think what she had done, she had bought a security camera that she didn't exactly know how to use, but she had bought it so she could film to see if he was getting in or not. And I was like, that's great. That's super practical. And if he is getting in, we're going to find out. And then if he's not, I can, I'll have the camera to point to and say, hey, look, he's not actually getting in. But so she struggled to install it. So I tried to help her install it, but it was like the cheapest camera you could get. It was, I think, really more like a webcam kind of thing. And
sort of like a super low end nanny cam.
Yeah. And it needed to like film all the time. And then but then it runs out of memory really quickly. And yeah. And so it wasn't super practical, because he could come at any time, but you like always needed to be watching. So we couldn't really prove anything definitively from that either way. And so my roommate actually started to kind of get involved at this point. And this is like incredibly generous of him. He decided to just buy a really nice security camera. It was kind of like, at the end of this ordeal or whatever, I'll just keep it and, use it for my personal uses or for later on in life when I need to secure things. But I'm just going to buy a really good security camera, one that like connects to your Wi-Fi. As soon as like there's any movement in your apartment, it starts recording and it uploads it to like, a cloud storage sort of thing. So even if someone were to like, destroy the camera, the video would be saved somewhere else and we can always look at what has been recorded by it. And so we installed that for her, and it worked perfectly. It was really weird. We would get emails like every day with like an update.
Yeah.
And it was 100% of the updates were her opening her door to come in. It was like super weird that I get an email every time she comes home and like a video footage to prove it.
That is a very odd thing.
Yeah. And so we did that for a while, and like there was never any footage of him coming in, but she like caught me one time walking out of the building again and brought me into her apartment to show me what he had done inside of her apartment. And she took me over to her kitchen and she pointed at the cereal boxes on the top of the refrigerator and said, look at that. Do you see that? And I'm like looking at it. I'm like, there's just cereal boxes up there. I don't know what you're pointing at. She's like, they're all in a straight line. And I'm like, oh, and like, you think he did that? Like, I was just like, I don't know how that's evidence that he came in and did something.
Theresa, what are we talking about here?
Who knows? But I mean, I guess like obviously like if in her mind they're like in complete disarray, and she comes home in there and it was 3 cereal boxes that were just like aligned nicely. But I get like if you know for sure that you didn't leave them like that, I guess that would be concerning. But it was just it was a weird thing that she showed me that, and so I was like, well, like there was nothing on the camera, so I don't know what to tell you. And there was another time she pulled me aside when I was coming in, and she's like, I just got home like 10 minutes ago, and the door to my apartment was open. I think he was here and just left. I was like, oh, like it was okay. Yeah. Well, let's see
check the tape
on the camera. Let's check on the tape or whatever. And my roommate had access to it. And so we went to go talk to him, and she comes up with me and she's talking to him also. And then when she's talking to him, she tells him, she told me that her apartment was wide open, and I interpreted that as her door was open. But when she talked to him, she told him that her door was just unlocked. And I was like, oh, that's not what you told me.
Changing your story, eh?
Change her story. And so, like, things like this would kind of happen over and over again. Eventually, she approached us one day pretty distraught. And I guess he had actually been doing some inappropriate things in the realm of like phone calls and texting and voicemails. And so she had like recordings of him on voicemail and texts that he had sent that she could use as evidence. And so she asked us if we would go with her to the police department so she could file a restraining order. And we were like, yes, that's actually like extremely good idea, because then this whole problem will be taken care of. And so we go with her to the police department, and she files a restraining order, and the voicemails and texts that she have are actually like valid enough to get a restraining order. I was worried for a bit that they were going to require some evidence that he had broken into her apartment or whatnot, which we had nothing.
We ain't got the tapes for that.
But thankfully the text was enough that he was just at least like emotionally abusive through text or whatever, threatening. And so that was enough to get a restraining order. But it was interesting. She was like kind of talking to the police officer, and she mentioned that he would pick the lock of her door to get in. And he I was really impressed actually, because she was distraught, but he like in a calm manner, while validating her like concerns and pain and like the inappropriateness of the text and voicemail she had, explained that it's ridiculously difficult to pick a lock, and especially like the way they make them now, and that most likely, like, and I think he phrased this well, but like the fear she had from his like threatening text messages and voicemails was maybe making her interpret like her forgetting to lock her door or forgetting how she had arranged her room differently. I was really impressed with how well he was like tactful, yet like not letting her believe things that probably weren't true. And so, all that was successful. He got the restraining order. He told us, like, if you ever see him, you can call police immediately and he'll be arrested. He's not allowed to be within so many feet of your property anymore. And so that was all good. And we had a huge sigh of relief and didn't really have to wrestle with that anymore. But then the kicker, like a month before I moved out of that apartment, she pulled us aside in the parking lot when we were heading out one day. And she let us know that her and her boyfriend had gotten back together, and she lifted the restraining order.
Teresa, what are you doing?
It's a bad idea and whatnot. So I haven't seen her since, and I don't know if anything inappropriate has happened or whatnot. But that's the Theresa stories. And
the Theresa stories. Well, thank you very much for sharing the trifecta of stories, ranging all over the world, from Zambia to Montenegro to your apartment. So very globe-trotting life and interesting stories. So thank you very much for those.
Yeah, anytime.
All right, and now we get into the tweets. I don't know if we've mentioned your Twitter handle. It is at PanMidwest. I think we did explain it was because you're a Midwest boy.
Yes. So Pan kind of being like all of the Midwest. Pan-American.
Across the Midwest. Covering all the Midwest territory. And so your tweets that you have brought to us are 3. And the first one is, funnily enough, about Theresa.
Oh, yes.
So the first tweet is like this. Theresa, nothing worse about a breakup than your ex's name autocompleting whenever you type a word that starts with Theresa, same letters. That one is great, and you kind of have to think about it. You kind of have to see it. It really helps. But basically, autocorrect gets you again.
Yep. It's really weird to hear that tweet immediately after my story about Theresa, but
Theresa,
it's
no
not,
way
it's
around
not about
it.
her. Her and I never dated and broke up.
It's a separate Theresa, a fictional Theresa or a real one.
It's a fictional Theresa. The concept came from a genuine breakup experience where, whenever I would begin to type a word that began with the same first letter as her name, it would auto suggest that I say her name, but sometimes if I, was sloppy with my typing, just autocomplete with her name, which is a frustrating thing when you're trying not to think about an ex. So
yeah, that is a good point. Come on, autocomplete. Did you end up getting around it? You can start typing a different word a lot that starts with that letter, and then it just starts to suggest that one.
That's a good idea. I haven't thought about intentionally trying to trick autocorrect or autocomplete. There was a while there where I think I never noticed her name popping up, but actually just within the past couple of weeks, at least on 2 occasions, I've seen it in the suggestions. It hasn't actually popped into anything I was typing, but I've seen it come into it again. So I'm not exactly sure.
Eh? This one? And you're like, no, still no. I haven't typed that in
years,
in 417 days, 11 hours, 6 minutes. Well, I'm sad to hear that about the breakup, but I know you're in a better place now.
Yeah, it was in the past. It was a while ago.
Yeah, and time heals all wounds from autocorrect.
Yes.
All right. Maybe you want to hit us with a tweet read of the next tweet.
All right. I don't exactly know which word you have them in, but I will just read this one. Walk into a cat cafe. Me. I've never eaten cat. What do you recommend, lady? They're for adopting, not eating. Me. Oh. Well, can I adopt one? Lady. No.
Classic cat cafe. Have you ever been to a cat cafe?
I have never been to a cat cafe because I'm actually allergic to cats.
Oh no, here we go.
It's not deadly. I probably could survive spending some time in a cat cafe, but I just figure why.
Just pop a Claritin. Yeah, just
yeah. But I've seen them start popping up, and the first one I saw actually was when I was visiting Denver. I saw one when I was walking around, and then they actually built one that was like a 5-minute walk away from my old apartment in St. Louis, and so. I just think it's kind of an interesting concept, and it would be funny if Cat Cafe meant that the meals were cat-based, not that there was just a bunch of cats walking around. So that's kind of
that's the genesis. Yeah. I also have never been to a cat cafe, but I believe there's one in Toronto. Yeah, I have nothing to add here. Would be fun. Would be fun to check out. Is it like this cafe has its own cats, or you can bring your cat?
I'm not sure. I mean, I know for sure that there are cats there. I've driven by. You can see them in the windows and whatnot. And I think they are. My understanding is that they're all like cats that have been like, rescued in some sort, and people who visit can actually adopt those cats. But I don't know if you can bring your own or not. I don't see why not. But I'm not the person to ask about cat culture. So.
Well, if you run a cat cafe and you're listening, get back at us at FOTS Pod on Twitter. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that tweet. And now the third and final tweet from Kevin at Pan Midwest. Do you have this tweet in front of you?
Yes.
Perhaps we shall each take a role. Okay. You can be you.
Okay.
And I will be Jesus.
All right. So this takes place in a game of ping pong. 3-2. My serve. Can I have the butt?
The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve.
Every time.
Now, this is classic Kevin, right? It's got all the things you love. Ping pong. Jesus. People being frustrated.
Exactly. A little bit of wordplay in there, kind of.
Oh yeah, the wordplay is a key part of this tweet.
Yeah,
came to serve, right?
Exactly.
So presumably this came with some of your religious teachings. You're very familiar with Jesus and how he might act when playing ping pong.
Well, I mean, the funny part of what makes the joke funny to me is that this is ideally not how Jesus would act, but the line, "The Son of Man came not to be served but to serve," is a line straight out of the Gospels, and so kind of funny to reimagine him saying the exact same thing but in a different context.
Out of character for the guy, but the line is key, right? Quoting verbatim that line.
Right.
So people in the know, right, would be like, "Oh, that's the line."
Yep.
Nice.
Indeed.
Well, that's great. I love it when you bring your faith into some of your tweets. Yeah.
Yeah.
You do that. You do it well. Kevin, you do it well.
Oh, that's good to hear. I tried to, and I never know, is this going to have a really small base of people who even get it in the first place, and even less who are entertained, or is it going to hit? So I was happy this one hit with many people, because yes. I personally enjoyed it.
Sometimes with the niche references, like you're mentioning, that's from one of the Gospels. Not everyone might know that line, but they will enjoy some part of it, like you getting frustrated with Jesus.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for sending those tweets, and definitely everyone give him a follow. Very hilarious tweets all the time, and Mustache Mondays every Monday. At Pan Midwest on Twitter. And now we get into Kevin's picks from other hilarious tweeters. Picked, sifted from over hundreds of tweets online. He has chosen 3. The first one by Butt Ghost, and the O is a 0, at Butt Ghost on Twitter. And the tweet is, at a club, "Do you want to do a human sacrifice?" "What?" Does stabbing and offering motion. "A sacrifice! Do you want to do one?" It's just a classic, super so weird butt ghost tweet. I love that it's at the club, right? That's It's a classic setting.
This is great too, because a lot of times tweets can be hard to read out loud and have the same punch they do when you read them. But I feel like this is one of the ones that I really enjoy just having it read out loud right now, because it really takes you like to the setting where it happened, supposedly. So
this one would have been a good Vine or something if you could have done it like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because it's like the perfect length of time. It would have been like 6 seconds.
Rest in peace, Vine.
Rest in peace, RIP.
Yeah.
Twitter killed it. Okay. So Thank you for selecting that one. Everyone go follow But Ghost. But the O is
Have you ever been
0.
in a situation like that where you're like in a loud place trying to get someone's attention?
Oh, yeah, back in the old club days.
Yeah, or like at a concert even. I feel like that's so relatable. You're just trying to like communicate with someone in a really loud place, and they can't hear you, and so you think, well, maybe if I like invert the parts of the sentence, they'll hear me.
Yeah, just repeat exactly what you said, different order, same loudness, and the stabbing and offering motion.
Right. Yeah, it's like this type of conversation happens to everyone over and over again. But But Ghost just put in the most ridiculous thing you could ask in such a situation. So yeah, it gets me every time. It's one of my favorites.
Well, it gets me too, and a great pick from you. So the next tweet that you have selected, maybe you'd like to read it. It is by Chimney Spotter.
Yeah. All right. You cause one minor incident at a museum, and everyone is irreplaceable Egyptian mummy this, and could have used regular toilet paper that.
A classic mummy wrapped in toilet paper, or you can use mummy wrappings for toilet paper joke. Thank you, Chimney Spotter.
I love Chim. He is one of my favorite tweeters. I think he's incredibly underrated. I think maybe family life keeps him away from Twitter a little bit, but whenever he's on there, I feel like most of what he tweets is gold, especially this one.
That is a very good one, and yes, high quality, consistent output from our old pal Chimney Spotter. Everyone give him a follow. So that one was from October 2015, so almost 2-year anniversary of that tweet.
That was even before I was on Twitter with my current, funny joke Twitter account, weird Twitter account, whatever you call it.
We didn't get into it, but you've only, I guess I mentioned that you've only been on sort of about a year, I would say. How long have you been?
Year and a half.
Oh, year and a half now.
Actually, in 5 days is exactly a year and a half. So.
Well, happy year and a half anniversary on Twitter as a joke guy.
Thank you.
So you had originally had like a personal account that you just used for surfing the web?
Right. I made a personal account in college, in 2009, 2010, something like that. And then, I was on it. I was active sometimes, inactive sometimes. And then, a year and a half ago, I made another account to just start telling jokes from, because I saw other people telling jokes from all sorts of, crazy named accounts like Steven Skinner.
That is the wildest name.
I know. Now, you took the opposite approach and represent yourself. Many others are just crazy, personas, characters, whatnot.
Yeah, who are we talking? Upside Down Trash, Trojan Sauce, Mike Big B. Wait, no, he's one of the me kind. But there's a lot of very funny, super weirdo handled names. And cartoon AVIs and all of it. But we still love them. They all tell the funny jokes, so... As long as that's the case, you're more than welcome. All right, well, thank you for selecting that second tweet, and now we have reached the final tweet that you have chosen, and it is from our good friend Frovo at Fro_Vo on Twitter. Now, how should we do this one? Do you want to play a character, and I'll read the directions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I will be the first person. Ready? Hey, Cyclops, are you still dating Jean?
No, Storm. We broke up. You could say she's my
lower sunglasses.
Oh, I'm lowering the sunglasses.
Oh yeah, I-beams obliterate Storm. I think we might have messed that up. I might have messed it up, but I think the sentiment gets across. Ladies and gentlemen, we didn't practice this.
Fro, you should have put actual character names in there so that we could more clearly understand who's doing what.
I realized afterwards that I was Storm, doing a very deep Storm impression there. That was my take on Storm. That's just my take.
Both the actions are Cyclops, but they're two separate actions in the tweet, so it's a little confusing too.
Well, sorry for butchering your tweet, Fro. Thank you, Kevin, for choosing it. He's great, and if you're not following him, what are you doing? Yeah. He also has a great call, King of the Calls, every Thursday. Most Thursdays, it's Throwback Thursday. So send your tweets, and everyone follow him.
And even though we kind of messed up the reading, let's be honest, even if we had read it perfectly, we could not do justice to this tweet.
Yeah, this is sort of one that has to be read. It's the High Beams Obliterate Storm really hits when you read it.
Yeah, it's a great take on like kind of, the format of puns to lower your sunglasses before you make the joke. But in Cyclops' case, that, will obliterate Storm. Classic. It's
a great pull, great ref, and we thank you, Fro, for your hilarious tweets. So that's it. You picked all the good tweets. Thank you for that. And now we move on to the questions from Twitter. The first question comes from Kevin at Pan Midwest. Why do you have 3 pairs of glasses on, idiot?
That's a good question.
Good question.
So one of the pairs of glasses is my prescription lenses. I need to see clearly. The other pair of glasses is they're eclipse sunglasses.
Oh, I remember.
Taken during the recent eclipse.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be able to see the eclipse clearly, but also not burn my eyes out. So I doubled up.
Important.
And then the third pair of glasses are kind of cartoon sunglasses that Steven put on.
It's a sticker. It's a Twitter sticker.
So I'm not as big of an idiot as you think, Kevin.
So thank you, Kevin, for that question. Definitely the first person who has asked themselves an ironic question.
Am I?
Yes. So thank you for that. The next question comes from at Obscure Gent. The Lord James says, "Why are you so young, and why is your mustache so old?"
That's a good question. I actually have never really thought about the age of my mustache because, this current mustache that I have is like less than a year old, but I don't know how many years it brings into its, existence.
But
from,
in mustache years, that's like 36.
Oh yeah. And then that's definitely older than me. So I don't know why. It's just, it is what it is. Like I kind of have an old soul. There's, other aspects of my life that don't fit my age either, and mustache just falls right in line.
All right. Yeah, I was wondering about that too. It's definitely a choice, right? Stylistic, lifestyle choice. But I think
actually, I just run out of time shaving every single day.
just the one part you forget every single day. Well, it's a luscious mustache. Everybody who's listening can go check out the episode artwork, and I think the mustache will be heavily featured. It's a great stash. I don't know. I think it really lends an air of mystique and 80s-ness to you. So I like it.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen.
So thank you, James, for your question. The next question comes to us from Isabel at Isabel Zaughton on Twitter. Everyone follow Isabel. She's great. And her question for Kevin is, do you have a secret hunch about how you will die?
I saw this question, and I've thought about it a lot. And, before she asked, I never have had any sort of conscious hunch about how I will die. And I still don't, I don't know, I'm not super, into like thinking about my death or whatever.
What?
I think I normally probably just imagine dying of, old age.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
That's not everybody's, life, but that's at least, I guess that's probably how most people probably just think that's what happens. They get old and die. I don't know. Every once in a while, though, I've thought, like, what if, like, would I die kind of like self-sacrificially, like to protect someone else, or then it's weird, but like often I'll wonder, if I were like in, a movie theater or whatnot, and there were an active shooter, what would I do? Because these sorts of things have been happening all the time. So you kind of, at least for me, I often will think, what would I have done if I were in that situation? I don't know. I would like to think I'd be self-sacrificial, maybe make some sort of attempt to like incapacitate, the shooter or the attacker in some way. But I don't know. Yeah, but that's not. If you knew me in real life, saw me in real life, you would not pick me as the guy to do that, which probably means I'm not the guy who would do that. But I wonder if I would have the courage to try and stop something like that, even if it meant I ended up not surviving. I don't know.
Well, I think it's incredibly unfortunate that is a thing that you have to say that there's a very likely chance that you'll have to deal with in your lifetime. But we're speaking in the direct aftermath of the Las Vegas shooting. Is the most deadly mass shooting in U.S. history. It's probably like one of the worst things that's ever happened.
Right.
And that's sort of fresh in our mind. So I get where you're coming from, but it's just it's sort of awful that this is sort of where we come to, and that's something that you would think about, when you're dying, but now it is in all of our in our minds, and I'm really sorry that is the case. So it's just a very sad state of affairs these days, Kevin. But that is a great hunch, and I think you would definitely come to the rescue of people in need. It sounds like from your stories that you are a generous and loving person. You went to the hospital and to be with your friend, and all your stories are showing. So I think that you definitely would be the hero in the story, even if you didn't make it.
Like legitimately, the foundation. People probably know the foundation of like the Christian faith is a man of self-sacrifice, and so hopefully, if I am being faithful to the faith the religion I follow, I would be self-sacrificial. So I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so.
If you take away one lesson from that guy, that's a good one. All right. Well, thank you very much to Isabel for that question. Really made Kevin think about it. Next question comes from Todd at the Todd Williams. And I think this is a crossover double podcast question. And the question is, are you as smart as Hype? Of course, he's talking about the Hype, a good friend of the show.
Am I as smart as Hype? So Hype has not revealed his identity like at all on Twitter. And, that actually might be a smarter decision than I made. Being somewhat open about what I look like, what my name is, where I live, things like that. But it hasn't. I've been really caused like no trouble yet. But for that reason, I actually might hand it to Hype. He actually might be smarter than me.
And just because he's anonymous online, that makes him smarter. So I say it's a toss-up. We'll never know until we do a definitive IQ test where you guys are in the same room, same day, IQ test.
Same test.
Boom.
Yeah.
I think Todd is going to arrange for that to happen, but until it does, we may never know.
I'm open to it. I'm willing if Hype's willing.
All right. And I think you need to tune into Making Friends with Mark McGurk to hear the other side of Todd's question. So do that. All right. Next question comes from Llama in a Costume at Llama in a Tux. And his question is very specific. As a Kevin, which movie do you resent the most? Home Alone, Up, or the Minion movie?
Yeah, this is a really good question.
Great question. Thank you,
Llama. All three of those movies kind of feature a Kevin, and especially the second two. Home Alone, Kevin's kind of the star, and in some cases outsmarts the other characters. But in Up and in Minions, Kevin is often kind of an idiot. I don't know. Maybe he's not an idiot necessarily, but a little bit. I don't know. And so I think I like Home Alone, so that one's out. For me, it's between Minions and Up. And I don't know, it's a toss-up. I could go either way. And of course, in Up, Kevin is a girl, which is a significant part of the plot. Maybe. I don't know if it's a plot point necessarily, but people remember that. Kevin's a girl? And so I don't know, like that, maybe that Kevin is mistakenly named. That's just a name that the kid likes. That's not the bird's true name, I don't think. So Minions, I guess.
There we go. I knew you were leaning towards Minions, just waiting for you to eventually circle around until you figured it out. It is the Minion movie. So there you go, Llama. Thank you very much for that question. Yeah, Kevin in Home Alone, he's mostly pretty chill. don't know why you'd resent that. He gets a whole cheese pizza all to himself.
Right.
So, Minion movie is the answer. All right. The next question comes to us from @CyborgHanky, and he asks, if you could grow a mustache anywhere else on your body, where would it be?
That is an interesting question.
Another good question. A lot of good questions this week.
Yeah. So what's initially coming to my mind, there's a guy I know of. I don't know him personally. I know of him. And he has a really nice mustache. And he when people reference it, he'll be like, oh, this isn't a mustache. This is a genetic mutation. I have 3 more on my back, actually. My mom had one on her forehead. And this, he makes this joke like over and over again. It's funny the first time. I've heard it a few times now, so I'm over it. But I don't know. I think for some reason I'm just imagining having a mustache or 2 or 3 on my back.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I don't know.
You talking like lower back? You talking about on your shoulders?
I was
mid back?
Like right between the shoulder blades.
Okay, yeah. Just tickling the blades.
Yeah. And so, I guess like if I were ever to like shoot my elbows backwards, that would kind of flex the mustache or crunch it up. And I don't know.
Very interesting answer, Kevin. On your back.
Yeah. On my back, between the shoulder blades.
Good question. I'm trying to think, where would I want a mustache? I think maybe on your feet would be kind of funny.
Like on your toes, right above your toes?
Yeah, like above your toes. Yeah, I don't know. Might be a little ticklish. So thank you for that question, Cyborg Hanky, a real thinker. Folks, write in with your answers. Where would you want a mustache on your body? Could be anywhere. The next question comes from friend of the show, Abby Cohen @AbbyCohenWL. And she asked her crazy great question, is envelope pronounced like envelope or envelope? Is fizzy drink called pop or soda, and why?
That's good. I really enjoy these sorts of questions. Hearing how different people pronounce the same word is interesting. So the way I pronounce it, envelope, despite you pronouncing it envelope in your question.
That was a bit leading. Yeah, I was
trying to bias.
There's no way to ask that question without revealing your bias.
So I'm going to say stay firm, not give in to your temptation. I say envelope. I say soda. I don't say pop. I don't know why. You
don't know what the regionality is? I mean, you've grown up in a lot of different places, right? Where was your heavy soda or pop phase?
So I think Kansas is probably where I started, to use that word, and they must have said soda there. But when I moved to Indiana, people for sure say pop in Indiana. And so I always felt, I cringed a little bit when people say pop, to be honest. I don't exactly know why, other than that being the first way I referred to it as soda, why that's my preference. I think soda pop is probably the official term. I don't know, the scientific term.
Yeah, there should be a third option, soda pop, for those kids from the 50s or whatever. Sody pop.
Yeah, but I just call it soda, and that feels like with water, I would call it soda water. If it's carbonated or something.
Right.
And so maybe I wouldn't call it pop water.
Well, no.
So that's why. Never mind. I just decided that's why.
There you go. That's right. You talked it out, and you came to the conclusion that you had the right answer. So
a lot of external processing for me on this.
I like it. It's like being on Millionaire, right? And the people just talk it out. Just talk it out.
Yep.
So thank you very much for your question, Abby. The answer was envelope and soda. All right. So the next question comes from Guy Incognito @Shut Up, That's Who. And the question is, what do you think the first thing Jesus will do when he returns to Earth? Apart from playing ping pong, obviously. Great reference to the aforementioned ping pong tweet.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I actually did see this one, but I have not thought about it at all. And so I am on the go trying to come up with an answer.
Just talk it out.
The first thing Jesus will do when he returns, I think he's going to do something that people think is impossible. He's going to do a 1080 on a skateboard in a half pipe. Nobody's done that, right? Like the 900 is the most people can do.
Yeah, I want to say yes. I would love to confirm this answer for you.
I feel like in my lifetime, Tony Hawk was the first person to land a 900 on a skateboard. I think snowboarders can do more, but skateboarding is hard because it's...
Snowboarding. There's a video game, 1080 snowboarding. So for sure that's one.
So
you think he's going to just like rip? He's going to just shred, and that's what's going to impress everybody?
Yeah. It's going to be like, part of how he proves he is who he says he is, you know? Like,
right.
Hey, I'm Jesus, I came back. Nobody can do a 1080. Watch this.
Yeah, he just shows up. He's like, I'm Jesus. They're like, hands of a skateboard. Prove it.
Yep.
And they're just like standing next to a swimming pool or something. He just drops in. I think that's a good start of the Jesus Returns movie. Jesus Returns this summer. Okay, so there you go. Thank you for your question, Guy. And the next question comes from Nick and Drumsticks at Beefman138. Now, his question is spoken in an accent, but I can't quite do it, I don't think. Can you do it?
Oh, I'm terrible with accents.
All right, so
that's why I love them so much.
Unfortunately, this will be read without an accent, but just try to imagine it in an accent. Okay, everyone. I have an Aussie accent. You're already turned on, aren't you, Kevin? I have an Aussie accent. No, can't do it. You're already turned on. Just can't do it. I can't do it.
That was pretty good. Yeah, I appreciate that effort, Stephen.
Yeah, sorry, Nick, about that. But so, he just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, I mean, I really do enjoy the Australian accent. And I like to joke around about how you could probably get away with anything having an Australian accent. So,
yeah, that's true. Those accents to us, plain old North American voices, Australian, English, they got great, fun accents. Very cool
South
stuff.
African, good accent.
Yeah, South African. Yeah. There you go. So the answer is yes, for sure. Thank you, Nick. And the next question comes from legendary friend of the show, Mike Bigby, at Mike Bigby on Twitter. And his question is, Kevin, you are my hero and I love you. What do you make of that? Also, which president are you and why? So, first of all, what do you make of it?
The reason that Mike Bigby thinks I'm his hero and loves me is, I think, this has been, people kind of know this by now. I think you probably know this, Stephen, but I have another Twitter account called A Joke Explainer, and Mike loved the account, absolutely loved it. He would message me often trying to find out who I was, and I told him a year after this interaction we're having right now, if I haven't told everybody, I'll tell you. And so that time has come over the past couple months, and I told him that it was me, and so he loves me because of that.
Oh, big fan of Joke Explainer. Yeah, it was it's an account that explains jokes that everyone loves on Twitter. So
I don't know if everyone loves it.
No, I mean.
The tweets everyone loves?
Yeah. Okay. Explains. So maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know exactly what made me pull the trigger on it, but, shortly after I had started doing a Twitter account with primarily jokes and funny tweets and whatnot, just from interacting with other tweeters, we talk about how we kind of roll our eyes and shrug when people will explain our jokes back to us, which is, a comment among adders. They kind of will tell you exactly why your joke is funny, which because you told it. And so I decided that I wanted to create an account where that's all it did was reply to tweets and explain them. And I kind of started using I hoped to be as neutral sounding a voice as possible. A lot of times what I'll do is I will Google parts of the tweet, or I'll look them up on Wikipedia, and I'll look at how they describe things, right. And I'll try to explain it in sort of the voice Wikipedia uses, very plain language,
phrasing it in a neutral voice, yeah,
descriptive, yeah. And so I just started doing that to accounts I like, or to friends on Twitter, or, you know, a recent viral tweet, things like that. And it started to catch on. People who saw it would retweet me, or sometimes the person whose tweet I explained would retweet me. And the account's grown a little bit, and it's been kind of fun and encouraging because I get a kick out of it. It's, in my mind, it's, you know, definitely parodying people who explain jokes on Twitter. But every once in a while now, somebody will actually like inquire the meaning of a joke. They like legitimately want to know what makes this joke funny. And so I do, in some cases I'm actually providing a service.
Yeah, like, so that's become like a service for some. Like, oh, I don't get it. Send it to the joke explainer.
What's tough is some jokes are hard to explain in only a tweet, and others I sometimes don't get them myself. And
sometimes they defy explanation, Kevin.
Yes.
So if you don't understand a tweet, listeners, send it to a joke explainer at a joke explainer on Twitter. Right?
Yes.
And thank you for...
You were one of the ones I probably replied to a lot early on because wordplay lends itself to being explained, and it's already obvious why it's a joke, what makes sense about it. And so I get an extra kick out of explaining the obvious.
Yeah, I got a bunch of joke explainers, and I thought it was great because I had no idea, and then you explained that it was you. That was the main explanation. So thank you for revealing your identity, oh secret joke explainer.
The meta joke explained.
Great. All right. Well, we didn't get to the president part. Which president are you, and why?
Oh man, I have no idea off the top of my head, which makes me nervous to like say one, and then. You know, people are like, "Hey, but that guy did this terrible thing."
You haven't taken the BuzzFeed quiz about this,
right? I don't know. I feel like people in general like Eisenhower.
Okay,
I don't know.
No, he's pretty good.
He led the nation in a time of, or after a time of turmoil, I believe, coming out of World War II, maybe.
Yeah.
And I think maybe. I wasn't alive then. I'm not a great student of history, so if I'm wrong about this and you want to point it out to me on Twitter, I will believe you. But I feel like maybe partisan politics were least important to America and to him as a president because we were united behind this thing that was bigger than us as a country, this, you know, terrible world war that so many awful things happened during that we needed, you know, to be engaged in and united in. I feel like maybe Eisenhower kind of is a more of a uniting president.
I think so.
Others.
And I think the key issue sort of was the advent of the nuclear bomb and the atomic age. So he sort of was the one who ushered in, like before Kennedy, the idea of maybe we don't want to use these and maybe we should put things in place to sort of stop that from happening, because I believe that there was a bunch of advisors who were advising him, like there was a time when only the United States had the bomb, and they knew Russia was going to get it any day, but during that time the states could have preemptively attacked Russia. They would have been the number one forever, but you know, how would that have looked? So Eisenhower had to deal with all of that, and I think he did a mighty fine job because we're all still here. Right.
Yes. Good. Okay, great. I'm glad you can affirm my choice a little bit.
I can back you up. Eisenhower was a pretty good president, especially for the time. So thank you, Mike Bigby, for that question. Moving on to the next question comes from Shuggy at Shug_Knight on Twitter, friend of the show, Allison. And her question is, of course, how many people has your mustache killed?
Oh, man, I was already laughing just from hearing her name because I knew she was going to ask me something ridiculous. As far as I know, my mustache has not ended anyone's life. Now, I can't vouch for times when I was asleep. Who knows what it's up to on the sleep. Secondly, I can't say it's never killed someone figuratively, you know? Like someone who's just extremely attracted to mustaches and kind of gets slayed by mine. That may have happened. I don't know for sure.
Right.
I don't keep track of those things or look for them actively, but it seems like it could have happened.
Seems unlikely, but we can't rule anything out. We don't have the security video footage to prove it.
That's what's missing.
All right, well, thank you, Shug, and everyone definitely check out her episode. Allison is great. And the next question comes from Brandon at BC Montgo. The question is, Kevin, is it true that you're Ned Flanders incarnate?
You know, it's possible. It's definitely possible. I've probably watched like 2 Simpsons episodes in my life, which I know is probably shocking.
Nope, that is exactly what Flanders would say, so I think he's onto something.
Okay, great. I saw, one...
I'm checking lots of boxes here. The mustache, check. Jesus, check.
Yes.
Are you left-handed?
I'm right-handed.
Oh, man, that would have been a huge one. But we got enough here to link the two. So,
I guess 2 probably makes sense. One where I decided that this is too inappropriate. I can't watch this. And then a second one, like maybe, I don't actually know Ned Flanders that well, but maybe like in a moment of weakness, gave into temptation and watched another episode. But he feels really guilty about it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right. And Brandon follows up with these questions. What's your favorite beer style? What's your favorite brewery? What's your favorite beer?
Oh, that's good. So I really like West Coast IPAs, which is an IPA, but often there's kind of a piney taste to it. I think, like evergreens in the Pacific Northwest or along the West Coast and whatnot. And I had a really, really good one in Seattle 2 summers ago. It was just, they had it on draft at this pizza place I went to, and I really liked it. I never could find it in stores, and I'm actually starting to forget the name of it now. I want to call it maybe Sea Pine IPA. I think that was it. But I've never gotten it since I went to that pizza place that one time. I really liked it. In the meantime, I've had a West Coast IPA that's brewed in St. Louis. It's called Fantasyland, and it's by Urban Chestnut, which is a great brewery here. And they call it a Midwest IPA since it's brewed in the Midwest. Or a Midwest
I see
IPA.
why you like it.
But it mimics the style of West Coast IPAs, and it's available locally, so I like that one a lot.
Great. Well, thank you for your questions, Brandon. Now moving on to the next question from Jillian Carger at Jillian Carger. And her 2 questions are, what is the best episode of The Office? And what is your backup best episode of The Office in case you were wrong the first time?
My favorite episode of The Office is a classic. It's an old one. It comes from season 2, and it's called The Injury, and it's the one where Michael steps on his George Foreman grill. And in the same episode, Dwight drives his car into a telephone pole and gets a concussion. And I don't know why exactly, but that episode sticks out to me all the time. There's just a lot of really great lines in it from many of the characters. And yeah, like Michael's ridiculousness of like thinking he deserves a ton of sympathy for this stupid thing he did, setting up a grill in his bedroom and stepping on it. And then Dwight, like with his concussion, is super goofy, but sometimes that means he actually acts like a normal, healthy human being. Yeah. And like relating well to people. And yeah, it's just a really, really great episode.
Well, Jillian, I hope that was the correct answer.
Yeah, I don't know if I can come with a backup, so we're sticking with that. That's 1 and 2.
That is the number 1 answer. So the next question comes from Maddie at Feeling Euphoric on Twitter. Everyone got to go follow Maddie at Feeling Euphoric. Really funny and new on the scene tweeter. Great stuff all the time. Highly recommend. And her question is, what's your favorite pizza topping? What if you had to put that pizza on top of a cheesecake? What is it now?
That's a ridiculous question. My go-to pizza toppings are pepperoni and banana peppers. Now, if I had to put that on top of a cheesecake, I would not keep it the same, I don't think. I really wouldn't want a pizza. I would want a dessert pizza on top of a cheesecake. So, like,
okay,
crust,
yeah.
And then, like, chocolate syrup or fudge all across the top, and, like, powdered sugar on top of that is a dessert pizza I've had that I like. That's what I would want on top of a cheesecake.
That is decadent, Kevin. That is decadent. All right.
Man, I could go for some right now.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Mads, for your question. And again, highly recommend a good follow for at Feeling Euphoric on Twitter. And now that brings us to the final question. It is from Tom at Yucky Tom on Twitter. And his question, Kevin, is it true that you and John Gourley of Portugal, the Man fame, go to the same barber?
I literally have no idea what he looks like. I'm vaguely familiar with the fact that a band called Portugal the Man exists. Is that what the band's called?
Yeah, Portugal
the Man.
The Man.
Or just Portugal.
Portugal
the Man.
Portugal, period, the Man, period.
Yeah. Right. So I've heard that that's a band that exists. I've never listened to a single song by them, and I have no idea what this guy looks like. And so most likely, unless he goes to Rich's Hair Salon in St. Louis, we don't go to the same barber.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at pictures, and it must be because at some points he has a mustache. I'm thinking that is the link.
Oh, I don't let a barber touch my mustache, so...
You do not. You handle all of the trimming yourself.
Yeah, that might actually be unwise, but it's true.
Well, I mean, you're going to get to 10,000 hours sooner or later, then you'll be a pro mustache groomer.
True, yeah. Right? That's what I'm going for.
Heck yeah. All right. Well, I think we did it. I think that brings us to the end of the episode. Kevin, we made it. How you feel?
I feel good. I felt a little bit like I was being interrogated more than interviewed at the end there. But
a lot of questions were very assumption based.
Yes.
But we made it through. And thank you again to everybody who submitted a question. A lot of great questions this week. I really appreciate it. And everyone follow FOTS Pod on Twitter and send a question for future guests because it really helps the show go around. I think that's it. Now, thank you to Kevin. And if there's any final shout-outs or anything you'd like to plug, any last words you'd like to have, you can say that now, and I will play the theme.
All right, well, I'll do a quick shout-out to my Twitter friends, people in the Lovely Spoon, especially. It's a good group of people, and I can't name everyone, so I'll keep it to that.
Spoon friends. Twitter pals. Love them. All right, well, thanks, Kevin, and this is the end of the show.
All right, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me, and everyone, please follow Kevin on Twitter at PanMidwest. And that is the end of the show.
All right, see you, Steven.
Oh, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode with Kevin. See, I told you he was nice. So nice. If you thought he was nice, be sure to let us know at FOTS Pod on Twitter. And also, please ask a question for a future guest. Follow at SkinnerSteven if you dare. Visit StephenWSkinner.com for all the old episodes and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or your preferred podcast provider and get a new episode every Monday. Thank you to Ruby Coast for the music, and thank you very much for supporting the show and listening all the way to the end. Have a great one.